I'm with Jags Mukherjee in Amsterdam with ING. Hi, Jags.
Hi, Matt. How are you doing?
Very good. We were just chatting, and I guess realized we actually haven't seen each other for 12 or 13 years, but we have already lived in this hybrid virtual world where we've actually had high contact virtually since then.
Indeed, indeed. We have been living the virtual world for almost a decade, Matt. So it doesn't feel as if we haven't met in real life in a long time. So
Happily, and that's one of the beauties. Jags, just your background. I mean, we've known each other for quite some time. You've been with GE, Hewlett Packard, TE Connectivity, journeyed with you through most of those chapters, and now with ING, looking after wholesale banking globally for HR. Tell me, what's it like in Amsterdam at the moment?
there are far worse places in the world where you can be in lockdown than Amsterdam. So Amsterdam itself has been, the Dutch have a very pragmatic attitude, Matt, about developing a herd mentality and how do you build resilience and, against the virus. So Amsterdam hasn't been that bad as a place, unlike many other cities which have had total lockdown. On the organizational front, we all, of course, moved into working from home in March, but we are now trickling back into the office along with many other organizations. Of course, keeping, making sure that we have the right safeguards in place.
Right. Okay. And so, really, I guess this has been now 6 or 7 months, and this has probably been quite a transformation for the company, also for you as a HR leader. What have been some of your observations?
Interesting. I think I begin with myself, Matt. I myself struggled with lockdown at the start. And it took a little bit of time, effort, discipline, I think structure, for me to pull myself up and say, hey, how does one operate in this new environment? And I think that's the same with most managers. I think that's what one is seeing with most managers who are leading teams is, we're all so used in large organizations to be dealing with our teams in a certain way that people did struggle. Many of the people who are at the junior levels, I think they have been much more attuned to living in a virtual world, Matt. And I think it's been less difficult for them. It, of course, depends on personal circumstances, how are their living arrangements, etc. A couple of observations that I saw, and quite big learnings from myself. Till you look after yourself, till you are very clear that you're in a good place and you know what you are saying or doing and feeling, or at least are in touch with how you're going through the journey, it's very difficult to be motivating and connecting with your peers and your subordinates to get them engaged. I think we don't pay enough attention to that. It is extremely important for we ourselves to be first reaching a good position in our minds before we are able to make the impact. The learning paradigm has changed. I'll give you an example, Matt. In my organization now, as well as in previous, many a times junior people learn by watching their team leaders or their manager's manager. How do you work on deals? How do you bring things together? Just watching, observing, learning, listening, how they handle clients' discussions, etc. That part is now gone because any interactions that happen are very, structured and based on technology. It's a meeting with an agenda, etc. So I think that paradigm has changed. I don't think we have the answer yet. No company does. I think we need to figure out how do we make sure that people at the earlier stages of their careers are also able to pick up what they need to. The third part is also, I think, a very important one. Engagement, I noticed, is up. Why? Because in this virtual reality, people really make an attempt, make an effort to reach out, parallelly across, etc. But unfortunately, after now, what is it, 6 months? It's becoming the new normal. You can see that people are getting into their old habits, and the efforts become far lesser, Matt. So how do you keep that going? How do you keep people's initial engagement that was there? How do you still keep that running? So those are some of the things that I've been noticing and reflecting on. So
So let's look at employee engagement, and this is obviously a critically important area and one that's changed in terms of how we get it, how we keep it. Uh,
Mhm.
what are some of the secrets that you're seeing? Because I also have some theories on this.
Hmm, hmm. I think whether it's virtual or not, I think the engagement topic, the criticality, or the critical magic juice, as it were, is the communication. Yeah,
Mm.
wherever you have communication, and communication, engagement tends to have an uptick. Matt, I always say. And it's funny, if I reflect in pretty much every organization that I've seen in the past, and sometimes even in this one, people do hesitate to give bad news or to share what is happening, etc. Employees, if they are old enough to join your organization, they're old enough to understand what the challenges are, and they may agree, they may disagree, but they're entitled to hear that. As I always say, if you're open, transparent, communicating, then it does have a big impact. The new leader of today, Matt, especially after this COVID experience, I think empathy, authenticity, engendering trust become very important. And if again one is able to get not just communicate mechanically, but get those messages out, share what is on your mind, share some of the apprehensions you may have, and as you make the journey, I think people understand that. The reality is this year, hopefully, we are never going to be having something like this again. But this changes organizations, it changes the economy, it changes the marketplace. Every organization is going to have to reflect how they deal with it and make changes. If you can get that out with those communication and the authenticity match, I think that makes a difference. What's been your experience? You said you had a couple of thoughts.
I've also found communication to be really important. And for those listening, obviously, Chapman CG has been virtual from the start. So it's been an area that I've been experimenting with for a while. So I think information needs to be shared very logically. You can't miss people off emails or off groups if they should be on there, because that can cause politics. I mean, obviously, communication needs to be very logical and to the point, but that doesn't mean that the discussion around the communication can't be broad and unique.
Indeed.
I've also found that hierarchy in a virtual setting can be more abstract, actually, because obviously we're more attuned to sending messages or creating informal WhatsApp groups, and we did this before. It's just that we're more reliant on this as well.
Yeah. Very true. Now that I'm listening to your viewpoint, Matt, there's something else that struck me actually when you talk about abstract hierarchies. People join organizations with something in mind, and that's usually the culture of the organization. So, will I fit into this environment, into this milieu? Will it work? What do I get out of it? What can I pick out? Yeah. Now, especially when new people join an organization or people who have not been too experienced in an organization, how do you get that organizational culture into those people who are remote? Yeah, I think that's also going to be driving a lot of how people engage, how they're hooked into the organization. One thing I've been noticing on LinkedIn, which I really liked, and ING has done the same thing, is sending periodically, maybe a box with nothing dramatic, whether it's hand sanitizers or a book or just a little bit of an update on the organization, an annual report, etc. But those things people because it reminds them that they're part of a bigger whole. But then those sort of things, I think, will also start mattering. How do you engage people in your organizational culture?
Yeah, I think it's really, really powerful, and we're going to have to think about this a lot more. Something I forgot to mention before when you asked for an observation is I've also found it really important in a virtual hybrid sort of world that culture doesn't just sit within the organization.
True.
It actually sits within people's lives, and so there is an importance to make sure that people are getting probably you alluded to it at the start, but nourishment in their broader lives and are being happy themselves so that they can actually be happy with the company.
Exactly.
Because the boundaries have sort of blurred. And this is obviously where such a great focus in wellness and purpose starts to come in now.
Yeah. So true. The other, that's a very deep point, Matt. I'm just reflecting. So true, because the overall well-being matters so much, even more. It always did, but now it matters even more because it drives how effective you are, how engaged you are. The other thing that hit me, which is very interesting, as a student of organizations, this is the best example of how every organization needs to keep on transforming continuously rather than have something like a COVID hit you and then force you to transform, because then you're on the back foot. If you haven't been driving too much of change, it's much more difficult than if you already have a culture or a working style within the organization of constantly transforming, looking at where you need to fix things, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how many companies make this transition well and how many not so. Don't you think that would be a good observation too? Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think we need to encourage agility, and we need to foster all creative ideas at all levels of an organization and make people feel involved in that continuous improvement process. And I think that's one of the beauties of the current time, is that we realize that. So we're almost not going to be complacent because we don't have an endpoint of when we're just going to suddenly click back to the way we were before.
Indeed.
And we know that that's actually not going to happen anyway, because we're going to be far more enlightened when we get back to that place. So we're not actually going to the same spot.
Yeah. I mean, that way, Matt, it's so tremendously, I know there's a very funny way of looking at it, but I'm tremendously fortunate, as are all of us, that we are living through this time, because the learning that we are getting, I'm so glad that we are going through it. It helps us evolve as professionals. Forget about the personal part, but it helps us evolve as professionals so much. Seeing how organizations and employees deal with all these changes. So.
I think it does, Jagss, and I think it also shows up the fault lines in HR strategy, HR styles, business leaders who have a passion for HR and really showing their best foot forward versus those that don't. So it's a beautiful time to be in the profession. Jagss, thank you very much for this discussion. It's great to see you in person and to reconnect. Thank you.
Likewise, Matt. Thank you for your time, and thanks for involving me.